That was the best. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, hello. Gosh. Breaking up is hard to do. These are wise words, even if they are by Kenny Rogers. Because sometimes knowing when it's time to have that breakup conversation can be just as difficult as the conversation itself. Because this is a relationship that at one point in time was fantastic. Because didn't we almost have it all? But somewhere along the way, things shifted, right? Maybe there's an increase in snark you didn't notice before, or a little too much constructive feedback, or my personal favorite, a lot of passive aggressiveness. Or maybe this is a situation for those of you who have paid influencers, maybe their performance isn't what you need it to be. They're not meeting expectations, it's falling short. But you do nothing because nobody wants to have this conversation, right? Meanwhile, what's the ultimate impact on your community? We all know negative behavior and toxicity is contagious. And maybe your influencer is stirring the pot with other members or other influencers, or maybe they're requiring way too much hand-holding and taking too much time, and you're not getting any work done, and you're starting to wonder, was this worth the return? But also, what about the things that you don't see? What about the members who aren't engaging as much because they don't like the vibe, or they're not even coming back anymore? But you still hesitate because nobody likes conflict, right? Nobody wants to have the conversation. But you know, we all know, that doing nothing speaks volumes. By not taking action on this relationship, you are setting a precedent, a standard for what is acceptable and tolerated in your community. And so I'd like you to think of it this way. Remind yourself, you are your community's influencer. You are your community's advocate. And you need to either decide what is it you ultimately want out of this relationship with the influencer for your community. And once you decide that, it's time for you to get your rules and count them. 1, make a decision. Either end the relationship or be open to discussing the possibilities of second chances. Personally, not a fan of them. I don't really think they work. By this point, you should have already been nurturing the relationship and trying to make things go better, right? However, in some situations, maybe it's your legal department, HR, or it's just better for optics if you plan ahead of another chance and then ultimately ending things. Either way, make sure that you are basing this decision on what is best for your community, and that you're not simply delaying the inevitable and postponing the conversation because of your own discomfort. And then 2, if there is one thing you take away today, it is this. Because no matter what the nuance or the situation or the behavior, get behind your decision. Make peace with it and believe in it. Because if you go into this conversation at all uncomfortable or wishy-washy or uneasy, it will affect your energy and it will affect the entire conversation. Because once you come this far, the dog days, they'll be over. Really, making the decision and getting comfortable with it is half the battle. The next thing that you're going to want to do is ask yourself, what is this really about? Look below the surface. You know, passive aggressiveness is often just a way, a really inefficient way, mind you, of expressing an unmet need or an expectation that hasn't been met. Ask yourself, when this behavior started, what was going on in the community? What was different? What was going on in your relationship with the influencer? Has something changed? Or maybe what's going on with your influencer and your other influencers? If there's a group of them, is there internal competition or jealousy going on? Or maybe this influencer is having a personal issue which you know absolutely nothing about, but it's affecting performance. Once you can figure out, or at least get a few ideas of why is this person behaving this way, and why is it continuing, then you can say to yourself, get ready, because love really, really is a battlefield. So I'm going to share with you a few things that I do before I walk into these conversations. Once I can get a general idea of what I think is really going on here, what's the bigger picture, I will go back and review old correspondence, messages, interactions, whatever, to see how does this person typically react when they are criticized? How do they respond when they receive constructive feedback? Do they get angry? Do they lash out? Do they come out both hands swinging? Do they maybe deny, deflect, shift blame to someone else? I'll even look at their own social media. If someone criticizes their brand or says something negative, do they delete it and not even bother to respond? Are they avoidant? Or maybe they take things very personally. They take it to heart, and their feelings get hurt because you know what? Truth hurts. And this is not an easy conversation. If you have an influencer, ask yourself, are there mental health issues I should take into account? Physical health issues? Maybe some major life situations? Is this person dependent upon our relationship for income? Is it possible that this conversation could trigger self-harm? That's why breaking up is hard to do, because we're people, and people have feelings and needs. Once you take these things into account, there are certain tasks or formalities that if you can get done before you even go into the conversation can help lessen your anxiety and get you prepared so that you can be present and really focus on the conversation. So a few suggestions. One, the first thing I do, I outline what points I have to get into this conversation, right? Because I don't know how it's going to go yet. I might have some ideas, like this person might hang up on me. What 3 points do I have to get out before that possibly happens? Check in with other departments if you have them. Legal, HR, especially if there's a contract, marketing, PR. I'll also actually craft out my follow-up email. In this way, because I know, after these conversations, you're exhausted, you're drained, your head is killing you. And if there are certain points that I know I have to get in, I will want to make sure I have them. I have a template almost so that then I can come back right after the conversation is over. I can update it based on how the conversation went, and then it's done. Also consider, what are you going to tell your other advocates, your other influencers? Are you? Are you going to announce it? What if they ask, how come this person isn't working for you anymore? Or how come they're not in the community? What happened? How are you going to answer that? How can you answer that? And then I will set up the conversation. And what I do is I will schedule, and I keep it a set beginning time and a set end time, because I want to have this contained. Hey, listen, would you mind hopping on the phone or doing a hangout tomorrow from 10 to 10:30? By the way, please, for the love of God, don't do this over email. Don't break up over email. It just goes without saying. And then once I can have that set up, I'm going to get a room where I have absolutely no distractions. I know I have a good connection. If I'm feeling particularly anxious or angry or frustrated and I need someone to keep me in check, I'll have someone come in and sit with me. And if I have the person on a conference call, of course, let them know this other person is in the room and listening. I find that having these things taken care of before going in to have the actual conversation helps me focus on what really matters, and that's the actual talk. Because once you're at the end of the road, and you're there and you're on the phone, and you feel the adrenaline and the emotions, and you're so worried, You're worried about how this person is going to react, right? But you're also worried about the social media shitstorm that could happen. So, write out how you want this conversation to begin so that you don't have to stumble with small talk or niceties, or that once those are done, you can go right into it and set the tone for how this conversation is going to go. So, like, for example, hey, Susan, listen, thank you for hopping on the phone with me today. I wanted to talk with you because I was made aware that X, Y, and Z happened yesterday, and I'm a bit concerned because I know we've talked about this before, and so I'm hoping you can help me understand why this happened again or what's going on. It's called speaking to understand. Be as authentic and transparent as you can be. Be vulnerable. Put it out there. It removes so much adversity and adversarial natures of a breakup. You're also here to learn something from this person. Maybe they don't like working with you. You would be shocked at the number of times I have gone into these conversations and had people break up with me. Maybe you're too controlling. Maybe they feel stifled. Maybe they just don't like the way you run your community. Or maybe they've been wanting to break up with you, but they're worried about hurting your feelings. Or they're worried as an influencer or as a founding member of the community of ending a working relationship. How will it look for them if they want to work with me again in the future? What will the impact be? And more often than not, there's no social media craziness or angry people bashing the company or the community. It can often become just kind of a conscious uncoupling. We both go our separate ways. But at least by coming to the conversation this way, instead of, hey, Susan, I'm here, I saw you were posting in the forums again, I know I've told you many times, this isn't working. See the difference between that energy and coming to understand? I'm concerned. I'm concerned for my community, number one. And I'm also concerned, why are you doing this? You can't always be so lucky. So if you're finding that this isn't going to be a conscious uncoupling, be clear in your words. Stop with the compliment sandwiches. They are so confusing. Susan, hey, listen, I've really loved working with you in the past, and I love everything that you've been doing. But I'm going to have to end the relationship because it's just not working anymore. You just told me you love working with me and you love everything that I've done for this community, but you don't work with me anymore. Be clear that if you are going to give a second or a third chance, what those terms are. Set it up so that if those terms or expectations aren't met, you have a path to ending the relationship once and for all. And meet back, regroup to see how things are going. Because be clear, otherwise, that we are never getting back together, that this is it. This is the last chance. And then once you have had this part of the conversation out, the second takeaway, the most important thing you can do in this conversation is don't speak. Listen. Let them have their moment. Let them have a chance to say their piece. You'd be surprised at what you hear. So many times, especially because emotions are running high and it's tense, so many times people will make your case for you. They will behave or react in a way that is the exact reason of why you're ending the relationship. And so it can reinforce what you've already talked about in the beginning, and it will validate you that you are doing the right thing by your community. And then sometimes you just gotta let it burn and let them yell and let them rant. But personally, I will not tolerate abuse, and I won't be berated. I will, and I have hung up on people. And it's awful. I usually do it something like this. Sarah, listen, please stop yelling at me. Please stop interrupting me. I've asked you so many times. If this keeps happening or if it happens again, I am going to hang up, and I don't want to do that. And then inevitably, if they're really angry, they're going to yell at me again, or they're going to start interrupting. And I will interrupt, I will raise my voice in a firm, clear way and say, I asked you to stop yelling and screaming at me. You've done it again. This conversation is no longer productive for either of us. So as I said, I am hanging up, and I hang up. And it's hard. But most of the time, that's really the rare situation, especially if you're approaching it speaking to understand. Most of the time, the breakup really is, hey, don't think twice, man. It's all right. Hasn't turned out the way we wanted it to. Could have been, should have been, wasn't. But you can look back and say, what have I learned from this? You know, one other thing that I do right before ending the conversation is I also write out my goodbye. Again, I'm tired. My head hurts. They're probably upset. You're not listening to each other as well, maybe. And ending the conversation is important. So I will thank them. I'll acknowledge, I know this conversation was difficult, or it was awful. I know this is disappointing. But I'm still glad we had it. I'm glad we've worked together. I've learned, and I do wish you nothing but the best. Because since you've been gone, let me tell you, I can breathe finally, right? And your community will so move on. I get it. Losing a member or someone who is important to your community, who is invested in your community, someone who has sway, who has reach, it's scary. It's scary. And your company may put pressure on you not to let this go, but you've got to remind yourself that this is for your community. Because in time, you have created an opening for a new influencer to either grow or step up to the occasion. You'd be surprised at the number of community members I've had thank me for ending a relationship and getting the community back to where it needs to be. And you'll find that the next time, hopefully, you're going through this, you can remember, what were some of the red flags along the way that you missed or you ignored? Because you probably did. I mean, again, no one wants to do this. No one wants to break up. But what have you learned from this experience that the next time you see those behaviors in a community member or an influencer, you can intervene a lot easier? You can be radically candid, because let me tell you, the book will change how you speak to your influencers. I highly recommend it. And then the next time you find yourself in this situation, you will feel so much better about just saying, thank you, next. So, thank you.